It's just before 7 in the morning, October 25th, 1944. The sun's barely up over the Philippine Sea, and aboard the escort carrier Fanshawe Bay, the lookouts are doing what lookouts do, scanning an empty horizon, probably thinking about breakfast. In 3 hours, everything they know about naval warfare will be turned upside down. Picture this: 6 escort carriers, and I'll explain in a moment why that's not as impressive as it sounds. 7 destroyers and destroyer escorts, small ships. Fast, sure, but small. And what are they about to face? The largest battleship ever built, Yamato, plus 22 other warships of the Imperial Japanese Navy. Now, this isn't a battle. Not really. It's a mathematical impossibility, the kind of odds where any sane commander would order his ships to scatter, save what you can, live to fight another day. But that's not what happens. What happens is something that still, 8 decades later, makes historians shake their heads in disbelief. This is the story of Taffy 3. Destroyers charging battleships, pilots making attack runs with empty guns, men who looked death in the face and said, "Not today, not without a fight." So our lookout, he sees something odd. Colored splashes in the water, red ones, green, pink, yellow, pretty really, the way they arc through the morning light, almost beautiful. They're shell splashes from the Japanese fleet, and they're getting closer. Rear Admiral Clifton Sprague, everybody calls him Ziggy, is in command of Task Unit 77.4.3. The radio call sign is Taffy 3. When the report comes in, his first thought is that some rookie pilot is screwed up. Now, there's some screwy young aviator reporting part of our own forces: 4 battleships, 6 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers, 11 destroyers, all of them, every single one, heading straight for his little task force. Sprague realizes the truth in seconds, and his blood runs cold. To understand how in God's name this happened, we need to go back, not far, just 12 hours, to a decision that's going to haunt the U.S. Navy for the next 80 years. October 24th, the Battle of Leyte Gulf is already underway. And when I say battle, I mean the largest naval engagement in human history. We're talking over 200,000 men, more than 250 ships, 2,000 aircraft spread across 100,000 square miles of ocean. General MacArthur. Remember him? I shall return. Well, he's returned. And sitting in Leyte Gulf right now are 600 transports and supply ships. Vulnerable. Exposed. Filled with everything the American Army needs to retake the Philippines. The Japanese know this. They've got one shot left. One desperate, actually rather brilliant plan called Operation Shogo. Victory. It's got 4 parts, like the jaws of a trap. Vice Admiral Kurita's center force is the Hammer. 5 battleships, including Yamato. The biggest, baddest warship ever built. He's going to punch through San Bernardino Strait and smash the invasion fleet. Vice Admiral Nishimura's got another force coming through Surigao Strait from the south. And here's the clever bit. Vice Admiral Ozawa's got carriers up north. But here's the thing. They're basically empty. Hardly any planes. Japan's lost most of her experienced pilots. These carriers, they're bait. Admiral William Bull Halsey commands the American Third Fleet. This is the heavy hitter. Fast battleships, fleet carriers, the most powerful naval force ever put to sea. On October 24th, Halsey's aircraft find Kurita in the Sibuyan Sea. They hit him hard. The super battleship Musashi, Yamato's sister. She takes 19 torpedoes and 17 bombs. 19 torpedoes! She goes down. Kurita's force turns away, retreating. Halsey thinks he's done it. Threat's over. Job done. Then, late afternoon, his scouts spot Ozawa's carriers to the north. Now, empty or not, these are fleet carriers. The target Halsey's been dreaming about for months. At 5 minutes to 9 that evening, he makes his call. Everything, all 3 carrier groups, all 6 fast battleships, north. He's going after Ozawa. Before he goes, he sends out a message. Battleships will be formed as Task Force 34, future tense. This is a contingency plan, something he might do later. But Admiral Kincaid, commanding 7th Fleet, intercepts that message and reads it wrong. He thinks Task Force 34 is already formed, already sitting in San Bernardino Strait like a cork in a bottle. Neither admiral checks with the other. Nobody confirms. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, October 25th, Vice Admiral Kurita's battered but still very dangerous center force comes through San Bernardino Strait. The strait that should have battleships guarding it, the gateway to everything MacArthur needs. There's nothing there. The strait's wide open. And between Kurita, between his battleships and those 600 transports, there's just Taffy 3, 6 escort carriers, and 7 small buoys. That's it. That's all that's standing between the Imperial Japanese Navy and complete victory. Now, let's talk about what Taffy 3 actually is, because calling these warships is being generous. 6 escort carriers. Right. So when you hear aircraft carrier, you probably think of those massive fleet carriers, the Enterprises, the Yorktowns, the Legends. These are not that. These are converted merchant hulls, Liberty ship hulls with a flight deck welded on top. 10,000 tons. Top speed, 18 knots. That's 20 miles an hour. You could almost keep up on a bicycle. For armament, they've got one 5-inch gun. One. They were built for anti-submarine patrol, not slugging it out with battleships. The sailors have a nickname for them, Kaiser coffins. The official designation breaks down to CVE, and the joke goes that stands for combustible, vulnerable, expendable. That's what we're dealing with. Then there are the 3 destroyers, Johnston, Hoel, Heermann, Fletcher class. Now these are proper warships, fast, maneuverable, tough for their size. About 2,500 tons, 5-inch guns that can reach, maybe 7 miles if you're lucky and the wind's right. And 4 destroyer escorts, even smaller, Samuel B. Roberts, Dennis, John C. Butler, Raymond. These are submarine hunters, 1,745 tons, 2 5-inch guns. That's it. So that's Taffy 3. That's what's about to face the Imperial Japanese Navy. And what's steaming toward them at 30 knots? Yamato. Let me give you some numbers that'll make your head spin. 72,800 tons. Her main guns fire 18-inch shells. Each shell weighs more than a bloody automobile. Her armor? 16 inches thick. Those American 5-inch shells, they'll bounce off like ping-pong balls. Yamato displaces more tonnage than every ship in Taffy 3 combined. Think about that. Then you've got battleships Nagato, Kongo, Haruna. Each one of them could take on Sprague's entire force and fancy their chances. 6 heavy cruisers with 8-inch guns and those long lance torpedoes. Those things can run 20 miles and crack a battleship in half. This is what's coming south at 30 knots. Taffy 3 can barely manage 18 on a good day. So when Ensign William Brooks is flying his morning patrol in his Avenger and spots them, you can hear the disbelief in his voice. I'm drawing fire. The bastards have pagoda masts. Another pilot gets on the radio. I've got the biggest meatball flag on the biggest battleship I ever saw. Sprague still doesn't believe it. Then the colored shells start landing. See, the Japanese use dye in their shells. Different colors, so each ship can track where its shots are falling. Red shells, green, pink, yellow, white. Like a deadly rainbow walking toward you. At 17 miles out, Yamato opens up with her main batteries. The only time in her entire career she'll ever fire those 18-inch monsters at enemy surface ships. The geysers they throw up are 600 feet tall. Sprague's got seconds, maybe a minute. He can't outrun them. They're 12 knots faster. He can't outgun them. Are you kidding? The only things he's got going for him are smoke, maybe a rain squall if he's lucky. And one thing the Japanese absolutely are not expecting. He's going to attack. Sprague orders his carriers to turn east, into the wind, so they can launch aircraft. Every plane that can get airborne, get up. Load whatever you've got. Bombs, torpedoes, depth charges, doesn't matter. Just get in the air and hit them. Then he turns the carriers south, running, buying time. But it's not going to be enough, not even close. On the destroyer Johnston, Commander Ernest Evans doesn't wait for orders. Now, Ernest Evans is Cherokee and Creek, born in Pawnee, Oklahoma. When Johnston was commissioned, he told his crew something they probably thought was just tough talk. This is going to be a fighting ship. I intend to go in harm's way, and anyone who doesn't want to go along had better get off right now. It's October 25th, 1944. Time to make good on that promise. Evans doesn't ask permission, doesn't request clarification, just rings up flank speed and turns Johnston toward the Japanese fleet, 25 knots, straight at them, laying smoke as he goes, zigzagging through the shell splashes. His gunnery officer, Lieutenant Robert Hagen, opens fire at 18,000 yards on the heavy cruiser Kumano. Now that is insane. The effective range of a 5-inch gun is maybe half that, but Hagen fires anyway, and the shells hit. Kumano's superstructure erupts in flames. Johnston charges closer. 10,000 yards now, close enough to see the details on their masts. Evans fires all 10 torpedoes, and one of them, just one, but that's all it takes. One of them slams into Kumano's bow. The bow section, everything forward, just disappears. Gone. Kumano slows to 12 knots, starts taking on water. She's out of this fight, permanently crippled by one destroyer that had no business even being in gun range. But Yamato notices Johnston now, and Yamato doesn't miss. 3 18-inch shells, each one weighing 3,220 pounds. They hit Johnston's stern and the aft section of the ship basically ceases to exist. 3 engine rooms obliterated. Dozens of men killed instantly. Speed drops to 17 knots, then 3 more shells, 6 inches from Yamato's secondary batteries. They hit the bridge. The blast throws Evans off his feet. His shirt's torn off. 2 fingers on his left hand are just gone. Blood everywhere. The pharmacist's mate runs up with morphine. Evans waves him off. "Don't waste it on me," he says. "Help the others." Wounded, slowed, burning, Johnston limps into a rain squall. And for 20 precious minutes, the weather saves them. The Japanese lose sight. They don't have radar fire control like the Americans. They need to see you to hit you. Rain and smoke, though, that's Sprague's ace in the hole. But it's not going to last. Kurita regroups. His ship spread out, searching. They're closing in again. At 7:40, Sprague makes the call that defines this entire battle. 5 words that are essentially a death sentence. Small boys form up for second attack. The small boys, the tin cans, the destroyers and destroyer escorts, ships built to hunt submarines. Now he's ordering them to charge battleships. Think about what he's asking. Think about what these men know when they hear that order. They know the numbers, they know what's out there, and they turn toward it anyway. On Hoel, Commander Leon Kintberger points his ship at the Japanese column and just goes. 8-inch shells from the cruiser Haguro are falling all around him. One hits, then another. The bridge explodes. Fire control's gone. Engine rooms flooding. The ship slowing down, listing, dying under his feet. But Kintberger keeps driving forward. At 9,000 yards from battleship Congo, that's 5 miles, close enough to see the enemy sailors on deck, Hoel fires 5 torpedoes. Congo turns hard to port to dodge them. The fish miss. But here's the thing. Congo's turned away from the carriers. She's running from a destroyer. Time bought. Lives saved. Hoel's got 5 torpedoes left. Kintberger aims them at Yamato and Nagato. Both battleships, the 2 biggest, most powerful battleships in the world, they turn to comb the torpedo tracks. North. Away from the battle. Away from Taffy 3. And this is crucial. Because Yamato's got Admiral Kurita on board. When Yamato turns away, Kurita loses sight of the battle. He's sailing in the wrong direction, away from his own fleet, at the moment when his forces need direction most. Hoel's dying now. Over 40 shell hits. The bridge is gone. Engine rooms flooded. Rudders jammed. At 8:40, she's listing 20 degrees. The abandoned ship order goes out. At 8:55, she rolls over and sinks. 253 men go down with her. Destroyer Heermann. Her captain's commander Amos Hathaway. She charges the cruiser column. Fires 7 torpedoes at heavy cruiser Chikuma. The Japanese cruisers scatter like startled birds. Heermann closes to gun range, and it turns into a knife fight. 8-inch shells smashing into her bow. Water pouring into the forward compartments. Her anchors are actually dragging in the water because the bow's so flooded. She keeps fighting. And then there's Samuel B. Roberts, the smallest, slowest ship in the task force. A destroyer escort. Built to chase submarines, not trade punches with cruisers. She's rated for 24 knots. Her chief engineer, Lieutenant Lloyd Lucky Trowbridge, and you've got to love that nickname in hindsight, he takes every safety mechanism on those engines and just disables them. Pushes everything past redline, past what the designers ever intended. Roberts achieves 28.7 knots. Impossible. The ship's probably shaking herself apart, but she does it. Her captain, Lieutenant Commander Robert Copeland, gets on the ship's speaker system, and he tells his crew the truth. A large Japanese fleet has been contacted. They greatly outnumber our force. This will be a fight against overwhelming odds from which survival cannot be expected. We will do what damage we can. Can you imagine hearing that? Knowing you're being sent to die? And these men, teenagers, most of them, kids really, they stay at their posts. Roberts closes to 4,000 yards from a heavy cruiser Chokai. That's 2 miles. That's point-blank range in naval combat. Opens fire. Scores hits. Chokai starts burning. Down in the aft 5-inch gun mount, there's a kid named Paul Henry Carr, gunner's mate 3rd class. He's 24 years old. His crew's firing so fast the barrel's glowing red. 324 rounds in 35 minutes at cruiser Chikuma. The gun's overheating. The breech mechanism's failing. And then it explodes. When they get to the gun mount, most of the crew's dead. And Paul Carr, he's torn open, neck to groin. You can see inside him. He's trying to load a 54-pound shell into the destroyed gun with his bare hands, screaming, begging somebody, anybody, to fire one more round. He dies holding that shell. Now the carriers themselves are in range. Gambier Bay's the slowest. She can't keep up. Yamato's 18-inch shells start walking toward her. 8:17. One punches straight through the forward hangar bay. 8:20s. Another through the waterline. She's taking on water. 8:23. 2 more massive hits. And then the heavy cruisers close in and just pour fire into her. At 9:07, Gambier Bay rolls over. At 9:11, she slips beneath the waves. She's the only U.S. aircraft carrier sunk by naval gunfire in the entire war. Johnston's still fighting. 3 hours she's been in this battle. Bridge destroyed, so Commander Evans shifts command to the fantail. He's shouting steering orders down an open hatch to men who are turning the rudder by hand, physically cranking it, surrounded by Japanese destroyers now. Dead in the water, burning. At 9:45, there's nothing left to do. Abandoned ship. There's a sailor in the water. He watches Japanese destroyer Yukikaze pass about 1,000 yards away. And on Yukikaze's bridge, the captain stands up, and he salutes, one warrior honoring another. Evans is last seen on deck, standing there. Still alive, still defiant. His body's never recovered. 186 men die with Johnston. Another 92 survive the sinking, but they're going to die over the next 2 days from sharks, exposure, thirst. Samuel B. Roberts takes 14-inch shells from Congo at 9 in the morning. All power's gone by 9:07. She sinks slowly, takes 40 minutes to go down. 90 men die. At 9:11 in the morning, Admiral Sprague's watching the Japanese fleet close in. They're right there. His carriers are fleeing at 18 knots. The Japanese can make 30. They're going to catch them. It's over. Victory for Kurita is minutes away. And then, the Japanese turn north. A signalman on Fanshawe Bay's bridge can't believe what he's seeing. He shouts, "God damn it, boys, they're getting away." Vice Admiral Kurita signals his fleet. "All ships, my course north, speed 20. He's withdrawing, turning around, leaving. Why? That question has haunted naval historians for 80 years, because here's what Kurita had: overwhelming firepower. He'd sunk an escort carrier, 2 destroyers, a destroyer escort. The remaining carriers, defenseless, sitting ducks. And beyond them, in Leyte Gulf, there are 600 transports, the entire 6th Army's supplies. Everything MacArthur needs to retake the Philippines, it's right there. Victory. Complete, total victory. And Kurita turns away. His Chief of Staff, Rear Admiral Koyanagi, later admitted the truth. The defense efforts of the American forces were so valorously executed, so aided by local squalls, that the Japanese thought they were attacking a major carrier task force. Kurita believed he was fighting fleet carriers, not converted merchant ships. The desperate, suicidal attacks by destroyers convinced him he faced a major force, ships capable of 30 knots, not 18. He intercepted frantic American radio calls for help. He assumed massive reinforcements were coming. He had no way to know Halsey was 300 miles north, chasing empty carriers. Kurita had been awake for 48 hours. 2 days earlier, submarines sank his flagship. He'd swum for 4 to 5 hours, watched his staff drown. He'd recently recovered from dengue fever. In post-war interrogations, he admitted his mind was extremely fatigued. A reconnaissance aircraft reported only 35 transports in Leyte Gulf, not the lucrative target he'd expected. The landing had occurred 4 days earlier. 132,000 American troops were already ashore. And late in his life, Kurita said something revealing. He simply did not wish to sacrifice lives needlessly. His mission was to destroy the invasion fleet. That fleet was already landed. Annihilating a few more escort carriers served no purpose. Winston Churchill later wrote, "It may well be that his mind had become confused by the pressure of events. Those who have endured a similar ordeal may judge him, but there's another perspective, a Japanese perspective." Koitabashi, a lookout on Yamato, gave an interview in 2004. He said, "We had been told the Americans were sissies. Watching American pilots bore through anti-aircraft fire, attack with empty guns, he realized the truth. These were not sissies. And when Japanese gunners opened fire on American sailors in the water, Kurita shouted, 'Stop firing! Stop!' He would not, in his words, shoot drowning dogs. The battle cost Japan 3 heavy cruisers sunk, 3 more crippled, 2,700 casualties. During the withdrawal, 3 more destroyers went down. But you know what? The human cost, the real cost, that was highest for the survivors. Hoel Johnston, Samuel B. Roberts, Gambier Bay, hundreds of men in the water. The battle ends at 9 in the morning. You'd think rescue would come quickly, right? Wrong. Rescue doesn't come until October 27th. 50 hours, 2 full days and nights. Glenn Parkin. He survived Hoel's sinking. He described it like this: "What made it bad was when a man would die, there was nothing you could do. You'd take off their dog tags and they'd float 3, maybe 5 feet. Then the sharks would get to them." George Miller, also from Hoel, his group would let the dead go at night. They couldn't bear watching the sharks during daylight. The life jackets, they stay buoyant for maybe 20 hours. After that, they're waterlogged. You start to sink. 18-year-old Bill Mercer watched his jacket slowly pull him under. There's an account in Newsweek from Johnston survivors. The screams began, a flash of phosphorescence, furious splashing, a cry of shock and pain, then silence. A man whose stomach had been torn out by a shark lay in the raft, begging to be put out of his misery. When the rescue ships finally arrive, the gunners are shooting at the sharks while they're pulling men out of the water. Jack Hewson, he was from Samuel B. Roberts. He tells this story. "We saw this ship come up. A guy on the bridge with a megaphone called out, 'Whoa! Who are you?' And we all yelled out, 'Samuel B. Roberts.' 'Roberts!' He asked, 'Who won the World Series last year?' You know what the response was from these men who'd been in the water for 2 days? 'To hell with baseball. Get us out of this water.' Commander Ernest Evans got the Medal of Honor. Posthumously, of course. He was the first Native American in U.S. Navy history to receive it. The citation, and I'm going to read part of it because it matters. It says, "Undaunted by damage sustained under terrific volume of fire, he unhesitatingly joined others of his group to provide fire support, outshooting and outmaneuvering the enemy as he consistently interposed his vessel between the hostile fleet units and our carriers. His gunnery officer, the guy who watched him fight that day, he wrote this: The skipper was a fighting man from the soles of his broad feet to the ends of his straight black hair, a captain who could strike fighting spirit from his men the way steel strikes spark from a flint. Lieutenant Commander Robert Copeland, Samuel B. Roberts, he got the Navy Cross. He survived, actually. Made it all the way to Rear Admiral. His after-action report has one sentence that just, it gets you. In the face of this knowledge, the men zealously manned their stations wherever they might be, and fought and worked with such calmness, courage, and efficiency that no higher honor could be conceived than to command such a group of men. Paul Henry Carr got the Silver Star. His commanding officer wrote to Carr's widow, and remember, this is a 24-year-old kid. He wrote, his gun was the pride of the ship. Paul was the outstanding example of American inspiration and courage on board. But here's the thing, the heroism wasn't just the small boys. The pilots, when they ran out of torpedoes and bombs, they kept attacking. With depth charges meant for submarines, with anti-personnel bombs that had barely scratched paint on a battleship, with rockets, with 50 caliber machine guns, with nothing, literally nothing, empty guns. They flew dry runs, just making attack approaches to draw fire, to distract, to buy a few more seconds. One pilot flew his Avenger for 2 hours after he'd dropped everything, just circling, diving, pulling up, making the Japanese gunners track him. One pilot, and this might be apocryphal, but it's too good not to mention, one pilot allegedly fired his service revolver at a Japanese warship, his .38 caliber pistol, because it was all he had left, and by God, he was going to use it. Listen to what Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz said about it. The success of Taffy 3 was nothing short of special dispensation from the Lord Almighty. Samuel Eliot Morrison, he was the official U.S. Navy historian. He wrote, "In no engagement of its entire history has the United States Navy shown more gallantry, guts, and gumption than in those 2 morning hours between 0730 and 0930 off Samar." Admiral Sprague himself put it this way, "The failure of the enemy to completely wipe out all vessels can be attributed to our successful smokescreen, our torpedo counterattack, continuous air harassment, timely maneuvers, and the definite partiality of Almighty God." The novelist Herman Wouk wrote about it in War and Remembrance, and I think he captured something essential here. The vision of Sprague's 3 destroyers, the Johnston, the Hoel, and the Heermann, charging out of the smoke and rain straight toward the main batteries of Kurita's battleships and cruisers, can endure as a picture of the way Americans fight when they don't have superiority. Our schoolchildren should know about that incident, and our enemies should ponder it. The Battle of Leyte Gulf destroyed the Imperial Japanese Navy as an offensive force. The ships that made it back to Japan, they sat idle. No fuel left. Japan was cut off from the oil in Southeast Asia. The Philippines campaign went forward. America won. That same afternoon, October 25, 1944, just hours after Taffy 3's fight, a Zero fighter deliberately crashed into the escort carrier St. Lo, the first organized kamikaze attack, Japan's final, desperate tactic, the beginning of the end. But Samar's about something bigger than tactics, bigger than strategy. Think about the numbers for a second. Yamato displaced more than all of Taffy 3 combined. Her main guns could throw a shell heavier than a car across 26 miles. The American destroyer's 5-inch guns? They fired shells the size of a basketball, maybe 7 miles if you were lucky. This was not a fair fight. It was never meant to be one. Any sane person looks at those odds and runs, scatters, saves what you can, lives to fight another day, but that's not what happened. In naval combat, there are defeats, there are disasters. Taffy 3 should have been a disaster, complete annihilation in 30 minutes, a footnote in the history books, a tragedy we'd rather forget. Instead, through smoke and rain and suicidal torpedo runs, and pilots flying at battleships with empty guns, through destroyer escorts, somehow achieving impossible speeds, and gunners firing until their weapons literally exploded in their faces, and captains pointing their thin-skinned ships at 18-inch guns. Through all of that, the Americans achieved something approaching a miracle. They saved the invasion fleet. They broke the Japanese Navy. They demonstrated something that you can't measure on a spreadsheet, can't calculate in a war game. Courage, not the absence of fear. God knows these men were terrified. But the choice to act anyway. To attack when retreat made perfect sense. To fight when survival was impossible. To die so that others might live. The destroyer escort that fought like a battleship. Samuel B. Roberts, all 1,745 tons of her, taking on ships 10 times her size. The destroyers that charged the world's mightiest surface fleet and made it turn away. October 25, 1944, off the coast of Samar, the small boys became giants. 80 years later, we remember them. We honor them, we learn from them, and we understand that sometimes, just sometimes, courage and desperation and sheer bloody-minded determination can overcome impossible odds. That's the legacy of Taffy 3. That's what those men bought with their lives, and it's a debt we can never fully repay.